Hey everybody, and welcome back to Bigfoot Cooking, part 2 of a 3-part series. We are making the ultimate birthday cake. This is a mirror glaze, checkerboard, chocolate, and red velvet cake. This has everything that you could want under one recipe. Now, to start this out, this is not that complicated. I mean, if I can do this, guys, you can do this. Here's everything you need. 2 2/3 cup of all-purpose flour, 2 tablespoons of cocoa powder. That's the best stuff out there, if I remember right. Half a teaspoon of salt, half a cup of butter. We're gonna use unsalted butter for this and have it at room temperature. It comes out later in the process. A cup and a half of sugar, 2 eggs, 2 teaspoons of vanilla, a cup of oil. Now we're using vegetable oil, but you could use like a light olive or just something that doesn't really give a big flavor to the recipe. You don't want to change it. So whatever oil you like there, except motor oil, that might not be a good one. Cup of buttermilk, teaspoon, not table, ooh, that'll put a kicker. Teaspoon of vinegar and some red dye. Now, the red dye is what actually gives it its red color. But way back in the day, a red velvet cake actually got its color from beets. Yeah, that's a whole different recipe. It takes a whole lot of work to do that. We're gonna cheat. We're taking the modern answer to a red cake. So let's get started with the bacon. First, we mix the dry ingredients. Now to begin this process, we're gonna sift everything. This isn't necessarily required, but what it does, any lumps, clumps, or anything that you've got in your recipe or in your, especially the cocoa powder, what this is going to do is going to go ahead and break that up, and that way you're not dealing with little hard pieces as you cook. So nothing too crazy. You can do, they have the old school little hand whisks that you could get and crank out, or just something like this. You can shake, shake, shake. You can stir around. There's not really a wrong way to sift everything. Well, I guess you could invent a wrong way to do it, but as long as you go through a screen and it breaks up all the big chunks, that's all that matters. But the main reason to show you why we're doing this, as I do the cocoa powder, you'll see there's usually some larger clumps in here. And that's what we wind up not wanting. Because, oh, take a look at there. Everything has already gone through and we've got all these big clumps that they just don't mix well, even in the mixer. So once you get it here, all you have to do is just kind of push it through, break it up. It's not hurting anything. It's not meaning your chocolate's bad. It just means that there's some clumps you got to deal with. And now we'll add our teaspoon of baking soda and a half a teaspoon of salt. And what we're going to do, we're going to go ahead and whisk all these together, get all your dry ingredients mixed, because even though it's just a powder and it's like, oh, it'll mix later. No, it won't. And you'll wind up either getting a big old piece of salt somewhere, or you'll have just too much chocolate in one spot. Trust me, mix your dry ingredients, probably more than you think you should, but mix them well until it's all one easy, simple color. All right, once you got these mixed together, now would probably be a good time for you to kick the oven on. 350 degrees. That way, when this is ready to go in, your oven's hot and everybody's happy. Now that our dry is happy and we're done with it, it's time to work on the wet. Let's take our room temperature, slimy, slickery butter. We'll drop it in. We'll drop our sugar in. Ooh, you know, sugar gets dusty. And now what we're gonna do, we're gonna use the whisk and we're gonna mix it up. Now, you can also use a hand mixer if you wanna do it that way. But the goal is to get these two guys mixed and just, but it's called creaming. Basically, you wanna mix it until it's creamed together. All right, now that we've made, I think, some of the sweetest butter on earth, what we're gonna do, we're gonna take our eggs, we're gonna pour half of them in and then run it for a little bit and then pour the other half in. All right, looks almost like mashed potatoes in there. From here, time to add our vanilla extract. And then we're gonna turn it back on and slowly pour in our oil until it all just gets smooth as silk. Oh, that right there is just looking right. Now, from here, we're gonna take our buttermilk. What we're gonna do, you're gonna add your vinegar to the buttermilk first and kind of stir it up. Now, since I got this nice lid, we're gonna close it up and shake it up. But What this does, the vinegar sits into the buttermilk and it causes it to, I believe the old Southern term is clabber. We're gonna clabber our milk. Where basically it sets it up a little more solid, and that way as you pour it in, it gives it a nice, smooth, rich taste because it's red velvet cake, not red dusty cake. So we'll pour this guy in as we turn. Now, before you mix the wet and the dry, you want to make sure your pans are ready, because if they're not, you're going to miss some of the lift, because between the baking soda and the vinegar, you get that same chemical reaction you did when, you know those volcanoes that you had to do in elementary school? You poured the two things and lava comes running out. This is the same thing. That's what gives your cake the lift, is the carbon dioxide. You mix it too soon and you lose that poof, and then you don't have such a fluffy, pretty cake. So what we're going to do, we're going to go ahead and prep our pans now. And to make these round inserts to go into the bottom, this is nothing more than parchment paper and a circle. And if you look back to my last video, I showed you how to make them. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna spray the pans, put the liners in it, spray it again, then we're gonna mix, add a little color to it, and start weighing these guys out. Now, sometimes when you're making a cake, you wanna add a little bit of liquid, a little bit of powder, a little bit of liquid. With this one, whole thing, all at once. You're just gonna plop it right in here and turn it on low. Let's see. We're just gonna ease this stuff right on in here, do the whole thing. And of course, when we turn the mixer on, we're gonna turn it on low. We wanna keep this thing slow and steady because I really don't want a volcano of dust to come out. You gotta stop and clean up before you start cooking again. So let's see what happens. Every once in a while, you're gonna have to stop and give it a little nudge. That way you make sure all the flour and all the cake get mixed together, because you don't want dry spots. The point of a moist cake is to not have a bite of dust. And besides, how would that look? You know, serve your guests a dust cake. Come on. Now, once you got this on a good mix, it's time to add the red in the red velvet. Oh, yes. Ooh, we get to crack the seal. Why? This is brand new dye. All right, now it's time to add the red part of the red velvet cake. What we're gonna do, I got this gel dye. You're gonna do about a half a teaspoon, but you could do more, you could do less. It depends on how vibrant and red you want it. I mean, this stuff, I'll tell you what, as I have already found, you get it on your fingertips, it looks like you're bleeding, because I mean, this stuff don't just wipe off. It is there until you scrub a dub-dub. So we got a little bit of red in here. Let's see how this turns out. And of course, don't forget to scrape your bowl every once in a while. Otherwise, you're gonna have spots in here that are rather red and spots in here that are, well, they look like chocolate cake, because in a way, that's really all a red velvet is. It's a chocolate cake with some pretty, pretty colors. All right, that's red enough for me. I mean, I don't need it to be neon red. Just with a chocolate contrast, I want it to be able to and stand out, you know? And let's start the pouring and see what we got. We're gonna guesstimate to see how close I can get these two on the first weigh. Now, I already know that the cake pans weigh exactly the same, so I don't have to do a tare or double check or any of that. So let's see where we're at on our first guess. Let's see, 2 pounds, half ounce, or 5 ounces. Ooh, 2 pounds, 9 ounces. I missed off a little bit, but that's okay. We still got plenty of batter in here to play around with. Ooh, 212 in both of them. Hey, I'm getting good at this. Now, let's let it settle out a little bit and prep it. Now, before we put these guys in the oven, we're gonna put our cake bands on them. What the heck's a cake band? Why, this will keep your cake level as it rises. Basically, it's a wet cloth. It's nothing more fancy than that. And what we'll do, we slide these around, and what happens is, with a little bit of evaporation from them being wet, it keeps the edges of the pan a little bit cooler, because you know, when a cake cooks, it always rises like this because the edges are what they cook first, because they're right next to the heat. But with this little bit of a band right here, what it does, it keeps it cooler and lets the cake come up together. Makes a world of difference. It keeps things level on top, so that way you don't have to waste any cake, because who wants to waste cake? And there's nothing to these. You just put them on. Let's see. Get it where we can see. You just slide this guy on, snug it back up a little bit. And then when you put it in the oven, make sure that it don't fall off on one side and whoop, you're good to go. Watch and see. We'll just slide in cake number 1. Woo. And cake number 2. We'll see you in about 30 minutes. And guys, let me tell you all about the latest in Bigfoot technology. Believe it or not, they found one of them meditating. This was in North Georgia. There he was, calm, collected. What is it, trying to find his chi or his center or namaste? I don't know the terminology. I just know, check this guy. He looks relaxed. He looks like nothing much is bothering him. You know, this is a guy who's he's figured it out. Maybe he could teach us something about just being relaxed in your environment, enjoying things. Kind of like I'm enjoying how you clicked the subscribe button. You did click the subscribe button, right? There's supposed to be a D on the end of it. Come on, man, help me out. Now, while that's happening, we're waiting on the cake to bake. And ooh, it's about time. Let's see how the oven looks. All right, it took an extra 5 minutes to get done. Hey, sometimes it's a rainy, humidity day. Sometimes things happen. So 5 extra minutes until the toothpick came out clean. Let's slide these guys out. Let them sit here and calm themselves upon the cooling rack, because that's why it's a cooling rack, right? Oh yeah. We'll get these guys out. We'll give them about 10, 15 minutes to cool down, and then we'll see if we can get them out of the molds. Now that we've given these guys time to cool down a little bit, let's pull our bands off. Tell you what, these things, whoever figured this one out, y'all were on to something big time. Now, the joy of springform. I don't have to try to shake, or you know how you're supposed to wiggle, wiggle, wiggle to try to get one to come out? Nah, you just pop the springform loose. Boom, look at there. Hold on, I'll do it again for you. This time I won't even shake it. Boom. Oh, look at there. And it's even clean on the inside. We're gonna let this cool down a little bit more here, because we're still just slightly warm. But see how them bands, I got a nice flat top on these things. Tell you what, that is the way to go. So that's the end of part 2, but you know what's coming in part 3? Frosting and chocolate glaze. So, oh yes. Until then, y'all stick around for that one. And remember, Bigfoot is real, as in really good cake. I just can't try it yet because I need it for the next video. Oh.